In topic 7.3, we're going to begin learning about special right triangles. In this video, we're going to learn about the 45-45-90 triangle. So a 45-45-90 triangle is also called an isosceles right triangle because that 90 degrees makes it right. And since two of the sides are congruent or equal, it's isosceles. It's actually like if you're taking half of a square. So a 45-45-90 right triangle has a hypotenuse that's equal to the square root of 2 times the length of the leg. Now, there's two equations you can use here. When you're finding the hypotenuse, you do leg times square root of 2. When you're finding the leg, you do hypotenuse to square root of 2. It's like you're working backwards. So these are going to be the two equations that we're working with today. So in this first problem, we're finding x. So I'm looking at x. I see that that's the hypotenuse. So I'm going to use the formula for hypotenuse, which is equal to leg times square root of 2. And here my leg is equal to 8. So I would do 8 times square root of 2, and that would be my answer. Now, sometimes they're going to want you to leave it with a radical because that's an exact answer. Sometimes they're going to want you to estimate it because it's 8 root 2. We don't really know how long that is. So if in a calculator, let's go ahead and multiply 8 times the square root of 2. And this comes out to approximately 11.3. I'm going to be rounding to one decimal or the nearest tenth. So for these problems, I'm going to be showing both answers. The ones that has a root and then the one that's approximated that is to a decimal place. So here the hypotenuse would be 8 root 2, which is approximately 11.3 units. In question 2, x is on the hypotenuse. Remember, you know it's the hypotenuse because it's opposite that 90-degree angle. So my formula for hypotenuse is equal to leg times square root of 2. So our leg is 3 root 2, and we're going to multiply that by the square root of 2. Here, when you do square root of 2 times square root of 2, it's like you're squaring the square root. Remember, we learned that that cancels. So square root of 2 times square root of 2 is not 4. What happens is the square root disappears, and you're just left with 2. So I'm going to do a little note of that on the side. When you're doing square root of 2 times square root of 2, your answer is just going to be a 2. So here this becomes 3 times 2, which is equal to 6. I'm not going to approximate that because 6 is already a whole number. So the hypotenuse in this problem would be the number 6. Now, in the next problem, we're also finding the hypotenuse. So we're going to do leg times square root of 2. For this one, the leg is 4. So our answer would be 4 square root of 2. And then if we wanted to get an approximate answer, we would do 4 times square root of 2 on a calculator. That comes out to about 5.7 units for the hypotenuse. On our next example, we're given the hypotenuse. This time x is a leg. So we're going to use the formula for leg, which is equal to hypotenuse divided by square root of 2. It's like you're working backwards. So here our hypotenuse is 18, and we're going to divide that by root 2. Now, it's improper to have a root in the denominator. So to get rid of square root of 2 on the denominator, what you do is you multiply the numerator and denominator both by root 2. The reason you can do that is because root 2 over root 2 is equal to 1. So you're not changing your question, you're just making it look different. So here in the numerator, 18 times root 2 is equal to 18 root 2. And on the denominator, we learned that root 2 times root 2 is just 2. Now if I want to simplify this, I'm going to divide the numbers that aren't with the roots. So I can divide 18 by 2, and that comes out to 9 root 2. Now, if we want to get an approximate answer, to have a better idea about the length, we would do 9 times square root of 2 on a calculator. That comes out to about 12.7. On question 5, they're giving us the hypotenuse and they want a leg. So we're going to use the formula for leg, which is hypotenuse divided by root 2. So 16 divided by root 2. And we're going to do it like the last problem. So we don't want a root 2 in the denominator. So we multiply both the numerator and denominator by root 2. On the numerator, I get 16 root 2. And on the denominator, remember we learned root 2 times root 2 is just 2. Now if I divide 16 by 2, our answer is 8 square root of 2. If you want to change that to a decimal, you can do 8 times square root of 2 on a calculator. That comes out to about 11.3. On the next example here, they give us the hypotenuse. They want a leg. So remember the formula for leg is hypotenuse divided by square root of 2. Here our hypotenuse is 24 root 2. And then we're dividing root 2. This one's different because we have a square root of 2 on top and bottom. Anytime you have the same thing on the top and the bottom, they can actually cancel. So if you see that, they can cancel. So here our answer is just going to be 24. Now in question 7, it's a word problem. They're saying to determine the length of the leg of a 45, 45, 90 triangle. If you need to visualize it, you can draw your triangle. And then we want to know one of the legs. So our X is going to go on one of the legs. And they say the hypotenuse has a length of 12. So my hypotenuse is 12. So we're trying to find a leg. So let's use the formula for leg, which is hypotenuse divided by square root of 2. And here we were told our hypotenuse is 12. Remember, you don't want a root 2 in the denominator. So we're going to multiply by root 2 over root 2. And just remember, anytime you're doing square root of 2 times square root of 2, that's just 2. So now at the end, we just have to divide. 12 divided by 2 is 6. So our answer would be 6 root 2. And then you can change this to a decimal on a calculator. 6 times square root of 2 comes out to about 8.5. So just to summarize, when you're doing these, if you want the hypotenuse, you take the leg, multiply square root of 2. If you want the leg, you take the hypotenuse and divide by square root of 2. And just remember, anytime you have square root of 2 times square root of 2, it just becomes a 2. If you have a square root of 2 in the denominator, you don't want that. So you'll multiply both the numerator and denominator by root 2.